Chapter 71. To snitch or not to snitch. Then, he stood up in the center of the room and requested aloud, "Ustra, scan the room and give me a detailed analysis of all objects, dimensions, lighting conditions, and spatial arrangement. Do it on speaker." A split second later. Scan complete. Here's what I found. Room dimensions. The bedroom measures approximately 4.6 by 5.2 meters, and the kitchen is 3 times 3.6 meters. The ceiling height is 2.7 meters. Bedroom. Queen-sized bed with white sheets, 2 pillows, and a nightstand. A lamp is on, and an empty closet. Kitchen. Stainless steel fridge, stove, and a sink with a few dishes. The cabinets are closed, and a microwave is on the counter. Food on the counter, 4 loaves of bread, a bowl of mixed fruits, a bowl of mixed vegetables, tuna cans, soda bottles, water bottles, and cheese. Person detected. 1 human leaning against the kitchen doorframe, holding a water bottle. Appears relaxed. After the analysis finished, Levi smiled in the direction of Instructor Seraphis and calmly stated that he had the entire room pictured in his mind, just as vividly as if he was seeing it with his own eyes. This isn't enough. You're right. Levi tapped gently on his right ear and added, "Fortunately, my ears are extremely perceptive. I can detect any sudden change in my imagined environment. Using this combination, I can pre." Before Levi could even finish his sentence, his ear twitched. Without turning his head, he swung his arm swiftly to the side and caught a small water bottle mid-air. Then, with a casual flick, he twisted off the cap and took a sip, smiling faintly under Instructor Seraphis' impressed gaze. "As I was saying, with this combination, I can predict almost anything, as long as my ears can pick it up." While Levi wasn't planning to rely on this technique after becoming a daywalker, he had used it constantly ever since losing his sight. It had helped him survive. The only downside was the insane energy consumption. Each scan drained the device's battery like a parasite, forcing him to use it sparingly and smartly. That's why he never used it if his brother was nearby. He didn't want to end up stranded with no battery left in emergencies. As for using camera lens glasses, that was the one thing he'd never resort to. Not when the government had the legal right to comb through personal data if they had a warrant. Of course, Instructor Seraphis had no idea about this, and since Levi was technically telling the truth, he couldn't detect anything suspicious. I have to admit, it still seems nearly impossible to cross the gauntlet of titans using just this method. But I'm not close-minded. I know some people are born, or forged, with special talents even without a contract. Instructor Seraphis smiled. I'd like to think that the Holy Heliodor region has one of those rarities, too. If Levi had shown signs of having signed a contract beforehand, that would have been the first red flag in Seraphis' mind. But like Fongling, Lord Idris, Levi's friends, and practically the entire world, he had utmost faith in Willow Grove's spiritual field. In their minds, if Levi had signed a contract already, the tattoo would have flared like a lighthouse the moment he stepped inside the tree, exposing him instantly. If even Tier 8 Nightcrawlers couldn't sneak past its perception, there was no way a blind kid would. So, does this mean I'm allowed to continue in the assembly? Levi asked, his voice calm but hopeful. I don't see why not. You have a valid recommendation letter. Technically, you haven't broken any rules even if you signed up wearing an ankle monitor. Instructor Seraphis confirmed. Thank you. Levi exhaled quietly, but the relief was clear in his voice. Though he didn't show it outwardly, the fear of being disqualified had been clawing at the back of his mind since the start. He always feared that the assembly's overseer would throw him out the moment his condition was discovered. And when he first laid eyes on Instructor Seraphis, he genuinely believed that might happen. Luckily, things turned out differently. If you'd like to improve your chances of being signed, I don't mind letting you retake the light affinity trial at the end. This time, the test will target your body directly for a proper read. I would like that very much. Levi's smile grew, his shoulders loosening. He knew that a retake wouldn't change everything, but it might help. Even a small improvement could shift perceptions. Levi had no intention of revealing his full truth to the public, so every edge counted. Then it settled. Instructor Seraphis tapped the doorframe twice and started walking toward the window. Just before stepping out, he paused, his voice turning firm but gentle. Whether you get signed or not, just know that I'm proud of you. For trying to change your life. I don't know how you survived a decade under the company of Nightcrawlers, but I respect you for not giving in to their whispers. I know more than anyone, it wasn't easy. No, it wasn't. Levi replied with a faint, mild smile. Get some rest. A big day awaits you tomorrow. With one final nod, Instructor Seraphis exited the room, leaving behind only a soft breeze. He left as he came. Levi remained seated for a few minutes in Arthur's room, doing nothing in particular. Just existing. Staring into the darkness with a reflective silence. What a day, but at least it ended on a good note. Eventually, he rose and returned to his own room. As he opened the door, he was greeted by chaos, the kind of chaos that only friends could create. The sounds of laughter, shouting, and a heated card game welcomed him in. While he couldn't see them, their noise was loud enough to reach every corner of the apartment complex. No one dared to tell them to quiet down, not when 4 of them were in the top 10, and the 5th was top 20. Their weird little squad, the group everyone laughed at during the first day, had now become the strongest team in this year's assembly. Meanwhile, inside one of the nearby rooms, Demetrius was seated alone, scrolling through the trial highlights on his tablet again, jaw clenched, until a sharp buzz jolted him out of his thoughts. Incoming call, Big Brother. He picked it up without hesitation. What, David? I am not in the mood. There was a pause. Then Mantis dropped the bomb straight away without bothering to greet him either. Levi Larson is blind. Demetrius blinked. What? He's blind? Mantis repeated, slower this time. No eyes. Covered it too well. But I know. I saw him in the harrowing forest and he was blinder than a bat with its ears cut off. Demetrius froze. He wasn't the type to believe such craziness, but coming from his big brother made him incapable of going against it. Still, that doesn't make sense, he murmured, standing up as though it would help his mind process what he just heard. He ran through the gauntlet. Did you see him slide across the lake? Dodge the damn weight traps? Land that staff throw? Yeah, I saw everything, Mantis growled. And that's what makes it worse. Demetrius ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. You're saying he did all of that, blind? Yes, but don't overthink it, Mantis said. Now you know the truth. Which means, if you want to get rid of him, it's easy. Demetrius narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Just tell the instructor. Use the rules. Say he's a danger to the others, that someone blind shouldn't be in an assembly like this. Mantis's tone was calm, matter-of-fact. The moment you turn it into a security risk, the instructors have no choice. They'll either suspend him or expel him for safety reasons. Demetrius didn't reply. He sat down again, staring blankly at the wall. 100 thoughts swarmed his mind, but one stood above the rest. This wasn't a kid with a lucky run anymore. This was a ghost. A threat. Mantis waited, then finally said, I know you wanted a way to take him out. Now you have it. I'll think about it, Demetrius murmured. Don't take too long or choose wrong. You are our family's last hope to make a name for ourselves. The Bane lineage needs to rise, at any cost. Keep it in mind, brother. Click. The call ended. Demetrius stared at the black holographic screen. Blind, and he still outshone me. His breath grew slower, calmer, but his gaze? It burned. Snitch? Me? To get rid of a blind mongrel? Demetrius uttered coldly, I will ruin him in the trials. I will show everyone, the only star in this event, is me. Chapter 72. He just made it personal. All candidates were summoned outside the apartment complex and marched to a sealed, industrial-looking building that resembled an old factory. Its yellow walls stood in contrast to the green surroundings, and its glass ceiling glistened under the daylight, an observation point for the Nightcrawlers. Instructor Seraphis hovered above them as always, stoic and authoritative, forcing everyone to stand straight like cadets under inspection. The sky above quickly darkened, not with clouds, but with hundreds of watching eyes. Nightcrawlers began tuning in one by one, each of them more unsettling than the last. Eyes of all shapes, colors, and eerie designs peered from the void, fixed solely on the candidates below. "I hope you've had a good night's rest," Instructor Seraphis declared. "Your brain will need it." He clapped once, and the massive entrance doors of the factory groaned open slowly. Gasps echoed from the crowd. Inside lay a series of elven corridors lined one after the other. Elegant, carved, mystic, completely unexpected. At the far end, linking the halls together, stood a giant wooden statue shaped like a wyvern, wings outstretched, more open, and an aura of ancient wrath carved into its features. Its details were dulled by age and material, but the sheer pressure it emanated was unmistakable. "Just like every time I've overseen a contract ritual assembly, I've left behind a small gift, paid for from my own pocket, as an incentive to give it your all," Instructor Seraphis announced. The candidates didn't react much. They had heard of this tradition before. His gifts were always difficult to claim, and not once had anyone succeeded. But then, everything changed with his next words. "This year, the gift is hidden in the trial of intelligence," Instructor Seraphis continued. "It's the sealed wyvern." He pointed toward the totem at the end of the corridor. "A Tier 2 Nightcrawler from the Era wyvern species. Anyone who manages to free it will take it home as their personal night mount." Gasps, silence, then a wave of electric excitement washed through the candidates. "Wooa! A flying Tier 2 Nightcrawler as a starting night mount. Instructor Seraphis sure knows how to spoil his candidates." "Spoil? Spoil my ass. The last time he hid a B-grade assault totem in the trial of combat, no one found it. Lul. I remember that day." The candidates almost fainted from shock after finding out that the assault totem was always used as decoration at the front gate of the apartment complex. The viewers' sentiments were shared by most candidates. While everyone could be seen salivating to own the wyvern as a night mount, they knew deep down their chances were even worse than last year's candidates. That's because the trial of intelligence was one of the hardest ones to pass with good marks, unless the instructor made it easier for them. Sadly, Instructor Seraphis wasn't one of them. Rumble. Rumble. Suddenly, walls started emerging inside the corridors, splitting each one into 4 sections, leaving the candidates to stare at a closed door leading to the first section of each hall. "Welcome to the Hall of Silent Totems. There are 11 halls for 11 candidates starting at once. Each candidate will be tasked with finding the correct incantation of the hidden totem in each section of a hall. The clues needed will be presented in each section differently. The difficulty and complexity of the incantation will increase with each section completed successfully. Each group will have half an hour to complete the Hall of Silent Totems. Candidates who fail to complete a single section will score 0 in the trials and will be instantly eliminated. Am I understood?" "Yes, sir." This time, the candidates weren't as enthusiastic. Most of them felt their hearts pounding out of their chests in anxiety. Ithorian language might have been taught in school as a second language from an early age, but it wasn't the same one used for incantation. It was like comparing simple speech language with the one used in literature. In this case, it was much worse. If the physical trial was a gym test, then the intelligence trial was a written test. Everyone hated written tests. Well, not everyone. Sounds quite fun. Levi smiled. "Fun. Big bro. I think this will be it for me." Arthur's eyes reflected pure dread and despair. Even his hands were shaking nervously, like he was in the presence of an angered father. "Don't overthink it." Levi chuckled. "I doubt the first section will be difficult. Instructor Seraphis can't afford to have many candidates kicked out in the trial of intelligence." This was the only thing keeping some candidates' hopes up of scoring something in this trial. They knew that the trial of intelligence was the least important one for the Nightcrawlers out of the rest. After all, the physicality trial was used to highlight the candidates for enhancement specialization, while the spirituality trial was for the few rare candidates with high spiritual presence. The combat trial was the most important one since it examined the candidate's battle mastery. As for the intelligence trial, while no one said that having great intelligence wouldn't be good in combat or just day-to-day scenarios, as long as a candidate wasn't a brainless zombie, most Nightcrawlers wouldn't care. Alas, such thoughts evaporated from everyone's mind after Instructor Seraphis presented them with the rules of the challenge on a massive holographic screen. There were only 2 rules, but they were enough to sink the hearts of many candidates. // silence is absolute. Only the correct incantation can be spoken. If any other incantation or word unrelated to it is spoken, the displayed totem changes. Astra AI and holograms. They can be used, but she must not be asked about information related to totems // Mama, bless me with some of your intelligence, or your boy is screwed. Arthur immediately looked into the heavens with moist eyes, feeling like he was about to step into his grave. Hearing his brother's woes made Levi's heart a bit restless as he knew that Arthur wasn't reliable in such challenges that required brainpower. He always allowed his nervousness to get the best of him, even if the question was simple and he knew the answer beforehand. While Levi had kept tabs on his studies when he moved to the Blood Hunters Agency and noticed a great improvement, he couldn't leave his elimination to chance. The instructor said that the displayed totems would change if the incantation was wrong, but he hasn't added a rule that limits the changes. Levi analyzed the challenge deeply. Did he forget about such a detail? It can't be. He has spent months preparing for these challenges. He would never leave such a loophole. The fact that Instructor Seraphis had planned for a hidden challenge in the physicality trial made it even harder to accept. Unless, suddenly, Levi's eyebrows rose a bit as he glanced at Instructor Seraphis' spiritual aura. He was occupied with preparing the groups, but he still felt Levi's spiritual gaze. When they noticed each other, a similar faint smirk broke off their lips. How shrewd and kind. Levi chuckled inwardly as he nudged his brother, attracting his attention. Then, he told him what he needed to do if he was stuck at an impasse. He kept it at this, not wanting to go over details to avoid displeasing Instructor Seraphis, but it was enough to restore some color to Arthur's face. After the groups were decided, Levi found himself paired up with Nura, Demetris, Celine, and a couple more high-ranked candidates. Arthur, Jojo, Melissa, and Ryan were split into different groups. They were ordered to gather with their group members and wait for their turns. His group was the most stacked one, which attracted the Nightcrawlers and viewers' utmost attention. Levi didn't know if Instructor Seraphis did this on purpose to blaze the competition between them or not, but he could feel Demetris' piercing eyes at the back of his neck. Demetris didn't leave it at that. He approached Levi from the back and whispered near his ear, "Your time to shine was yesterday. Ithorian language is my first B*TCH and you will be the second. I don't think there's a need for such foul language." Levi turned his head to face him and spoke with a deep frown. "I don't care if you cursed me, but you better show some respect to Ithorian." "Or what?" Demetris sneered and continued whispering near his ear. "What can a disabled prick like you even do?" "So you know? Congratulations, I guess," Levi asked calmly. "What now? Are you going to out me? Rat me to the instructor." He wasn't that surprised, as he knew that the moment Demetris got access to the network, he'd look for information about him. While he wouldn't find anything since Levi's information was classified by the government, Levi had met someone related to him, his big brother, Mantis. Levi was certain that Mantis would expose him to his brother and maybe rat him out to the instructor to get him eliminated. However, he didn't expect Demetris' next response. "No, no, no. Why would I do such a thing?" Demetris smiled coldly. "A hero always needs a villain to shine brighter. You, my little empty-eyed mongrel, fit the description." Before Levi could respond, Nura's voice resounded from behind them. "Having a rivalry meeting without me? How insensitive." She pouted playfully for a moment, but after sensing the chilling atmosphere between them, her expression turned sober. "Good luck." Demetris nodded at them both like an upstanding citizen and walked away, awaiting his group's turn. After he left, Nura turned to Levi and felt her heart skip a beat after seeing his expression. He was smiling, but just barely, the kind of smile that shouldn't exist in this moment. Too calm, too fake. His head was affixed in Demetrius' direction, making her feel like he was staring at something already decided. She didn't know why, but she had a feeling like she was standing in the presence of a Nightcrawler. Nura had been interacting with them since a young age, too, which made her feel even more disturbed. "Did something happen?" she asked. "Nothing much," Levi said with the same eerie smile. "He just made it personal." Levi's patience was near saint level, and he had no problems with being bothered, cursed, ignored, or whatnot. He always smiled at such petty problems, believing his energy should be focused on bigger issues. But when someone made fun of his condition and meant it as an insult, nothing else mattered besides restoring balance. He had gotten too much crap for over a decade by Nightcrawlers about his condition, and he always retaliated back with words, knowing that he couldn't do more even if he wanted to. Now that it came from the mouth of another human, Levi would never let it slide, especially when his condition was related to his parents' death. Before Nura could ask him for details, Levi gave her a polite head nod and walked to an empty area. Group F, kick off the trial. Chapter 73, The Hall of Silent Totems. Following Instructor Seraphis' order, Arthur and 9 more candidates walked towards the 10 doors. Some were nervous, some were focused, and some were chilled. A few candidates had prepared for this trial for years in advance. K.A. Thumb. The moment Arthur stepped inside the first section, the door closed behind him, and he was introduced to a small room with 4 walls illuminated by a single bioluminescent crystal. All the walls started to glow faintly with mysterious Ithorian runes, appearing like they were holding hands and dancing before Arthur. But this wasn't part of the trial, as it was happening only to Arthur, who was suffering from visual dyslexia. "Damn it! Can you not? Just once?" Arthur murmured in his mind, feeling his eyes shifting and losing focus. He blinked hard and then read the first phrase in his sight. "Vetherin os ulm ka." The letters warped. "Vhe o ulme." Does it mean the lost one walks alone? Or who walks alone is lost? A. Arthur felt like he had to invest all of his brain's processing power to do basic reading. He hated this more than anything else, as it made him feel stupid and useless. That's why he started hating studies. He stopped feeling like he was gaining knowledge and instead felt like he was waging war with the letters. Since that cursed night, reading had become a battle every time he got nervous. While he wasn't there personally, the news and his brother's condition were more than enough to traumatize him for life. It didn't help that he received the news while reading a storybook. Stay put. Damn it. Arthur slammed his fists against the wall and rubbed his eyes. This seemed to help for a moment as the letters returned to their positions. The totems will arise in 3, 2, 1. Your timer has begun. Following Instructor Seraphis' announcement, Arthur noticed a small axe-like wooden totem pop out of the platform. It started spinning on its axis, akin to a treasure on display at a museum. Is this an assault totem? Arthur frowned, not recognizing the totem at all. He knew there were millions of totems, if not more, making it extremely difficult to memorize every single one and its incantation. But he knew some tips. If weapon-shaped, it was an assault totem. If defensive-shaped, it was a protection totem. If bottle-shaped, a recovery totem. If animal-shaped, a sealing totem. If symbol-shaped, a skill totem. There were many other unnamed types, but Arthur didn't know much about them. They were used only by upper-ranked daywalkers. Too rare and potent for their knowledge to be spread publicly. While the totem's shape generally decided its effect, there were always exceptions. It's impossible for this to be a trick question right off the bat. So, this must be an assault totem. But what is it? I haven't read about an axe-shaped assault totem before. Arthur frowned. While he was struggling to recognize the totem, a candidate in his group had already cleared the first section, opening the door to the next level. Arthur realized it after hearing the noise. Do I give it a shot and try to analyze the incantation from the walls? The moment this thought crossed his mind, The glowing letters on the walls started jumping again, dancing chaotically, overwhelming him. F***ck it. Let's do what Levi said. Arthur gave up and spoke aloud. Pass. The moment the word left his mouth, the walls dimmed for a few seconds. Then, they glowed red before the totem was pulled inside the platform and replaced with another. Arthur glanced at the new wooden bottle-like totem in silence. When nothing else happened, he did the same again. The totem was replaced with another. When Arthur didn't recognize it either, he passed again. After doing this 3 more times with no penalty, his grin widened. Big Bro was right. Levi had told him that since Instructor Seraphis hadn't placed a rule limiting the number of changes, he might theoretically keep changing the totems until the end of the trial. Thus, the best course of action was to keep passing on unfamiliar totems until he landed on one he had memorized during preparation. Since the first section was the easiest, the totems weren't that rare. After Arthur changed the totem 2 more times, he finally landed on one he had read about just a week ago. A recovery totem used to heal burn wounds. Its incantation was still fresh in his mind. Varelthura Ienshakai, Rektha Os Lumina, Light Restore, Heal the burn, the pain no more. Arthur spelled out the incantation with a thick accent. Unlike Levi, he wasn't fluent in the slightest. He rarely spoke Ithorian day to day. Still, the pronunciation was correct, and that's all that mattered for low-grade totems. The inscriptions on the recovery totem lit up briefly and released their light onto the walls, shifting their white glow to green. The platform pulled back into the ground, and the door unlocked to the next section. Arthur exhaled in relief and stepped forward. Maybe I can go all the way using this loophole. He grinned after noticing the same setup. Alas, he soon discovered that Instructor Seraphis' kindness extended only to the first section. The totem didn't change after Arthur passed on it. Instead, the inscriptions engraved on it and the walls began shifting. With his visual dyslexia in full effect, Arthur was left staring helplessly, his mind going completely blank. Yep, I ain't doing all that. Arthur sat down and meditated for the next half hour, understanding his limitations well. He had just started memorizing and learning Ithorian seriously in the past 2 months. There was no way in hell he'd be able to extract the incantations from those walls. Arthur didn't need to feel too bad. Most candidates had it rough in the second section. Even those who were well prepared. After half an hour, only 2 of them made it to the third section. Soon, the doors unlocked and the candidates returned to the main gathering area. Each result appeared on the large holographic screen. How did it go? Levi asked. I used your tip to pass the first section, but that was it. The next sections have the inscriptions on the totems and the walls changing instead. Arthur sighed in relief. As long as I didn't score 0, we chilling. I see. Levi had expected as much from Instructor Seraphis. He understood the loophole was a mercy, for saving time, and to avoid eliminating too many candidates outright. If someone couldn't solve a section or figure out the trick, tough luck. Soon, the next group entered. Jojo and Melissa were among them. Although Levi hadn't shared the loophole with his friends, he wasn't worried. They had talked yesterday about both trials, and he knew neither of them struggled with reading like Arthur. As expected, Melissa solved the second section while Jojo made it to the fourth before time ran out. For now, Jojo was in the lead. Levi quickly asked what he could expect inside. Jojo told him the clues got weirder and weirder with each level. Before she could go into detail, Instructor Seraphis called out, Group A, move up. It's my turn. See you guys in a bit. Levi nodded at his friends and walked to the central hall, closest to him. But before he reached it, Demetrius appeared and cut him off, standing in front of the door with a hidden scornful glare, silently declaring he was the center of the stage, not Levi. Levi let out a faint chuckle and simply turned, walking to the last remaining hall at the far corner. Nura walked beside him, giggling behind her hand. What did you do to warrant such hatred? She asked. I don't know how it started, but I know how it's going to end. Levi smiled serenely. Oh? Just don't forget about me. Nura's obsidian eyes gleamed dangerously, letting him know she wasn't to be taken lightly either. "I'll think about it. If I see you on the other side." Levi smiled playfully in her direction and entered the room, unaware that his words had melted the danger from Nura's eyes and replaced it with a slight red hue on her cheeks. "How cheeky," she murmured. Once all candidates entered the first section and the doors shut, Instructor Seraphis called out, "3, 2, 1, your timer has begun." Ting, ting, ting. Almost immediately, Levi, Nura, and Demetrius had solved the first section and rushed into the second. Before the viewers could even react, all three cleared the second section simultaneously, in less than 3 seconds. Chapter 74, Welcome to My World. Only when they stepped inside the third section did they finally pause, recognizing the totem placed in front of them, but its incantation wasn't the same. Levi ignored the recovery totem in the shape of a wooden ice droplet bottle and focused on the walls around him. He recognized the totem to be the Emberheart totem. It was a grade C recovery totem used to cure any diseases or wounds related to coldness, frostbits, cold heart, lung freeze sickness, and more. It was quite an unknown totem as it wasn't included in the school's curriculum in hot places like their region. On the other hand, it was taught in schools in overseas winter regions. The fact that Levi had recognized it should have been enough to pass him this section since it implied that he had read about totems outside of his region. However, Instructor Seraphis had already given them a free section related to memorization to earn them free points. "I have to rely on Astra's services in public." Levi nodded twice without saying anything. Yet, Astra AI recognized that he wanted her to scan the walls and feed him with their content. He did this to avoid speaking out loud and ruining his progress. Levi could use sound waves to paint a much clearer picture and accelerate his progress, but he didn't want to waste unnecessary solar energy. He was still on day 2, and he had already burned through 40% of his tank. Levi knew that his echolocation ability would be a must during the combat trial. But, most importantly, he is really relying on Astra's services. Instructor Seraphis murmured, "How is he supposed to remember everything she is saying without noting it?" Instructor Seraphis was keeping a close eye on Levi as he was curious about his means to pass this trial. It wasn't an everyday scenario to have a blind candidate coursing through the challenges. When he saw how Nura and Demetrius were using many holographic screens to help them organize their thoughts, he didn't know how Levi would be able to match their speed. The fact that Levi wasn't using holograms was starting to draw the attention of the viewers and Nightcrawlers. Is he really that confident in his memory? Even if he is confident, why waste time with mental gymnastics when holograms are allowed to facilitate the work? Maybe he is growing complacent. I have seen it happen too many times. Whether the Nightcrawlers or the viewers, no one understood what Levi was attempting to pull with this foolish stunt besides wasting his time. Only Ashkral, Shia, and the others with knowledge of his disability knew that it wasn't up to him. Uncaring about anyone's opinions, Levi was seen brainstorming on the answer for the right incantation as he listened to Astra's narration of the clues. There are too many fake clues unrelated to the subject. But, at the same time, I can't make Astra prioritize information related to the totem. Levi knitted his eyebrows as he listened to the barrage of unnecessary info dumps used to throw off the candidates with no idea about the totem's origin. While Nura and Demetrius could use their eyes to scan their walls and make an educated judgment, he was stuck like this unless he found a way. Ting! Ting! Suddenly, the bells on Nura's and Demetrius' doors rang, attracting everyone's attention. When they saw that they had already cleared the third section and went inside the fourth, the viewers cheered at their insane speed. They found the answer that fast. Jojo's pupils widened after recalling the intense effort she had to go through for more than 20 minutes just to solve the puzzle. But as her emotions were starting to rise, she caught them off guard with a deep breath. There is no need for emotions in low-stakes situations. No need, no need. Jojo kept humming in her mind, completely forgetting about the other two. Meanwhile, Arthur couldn't give a *T as he was showing a heated expression. Damn it! If my brother wasn't BL. Damn it! He couldn't even back up his brother without exposing him, forcing him to bite his nails and wait for his brother to show them his true capabilities. Meanwhile, when Demetrius and Neura didn't hear Levi's bell after minutes passed inside the fourth stage, each one had a different reaction. Heh, a struggling cripple will always remain as one. Demetrius snickered, anticipating this much from Levi. Is this his limit? Neura sighed, if he has to take this much time to solve the third section, he may not complete the whole haul. Soon, Neura refocused on the puzzle that had eluded her for the past few minutes, leaving her utterly stumped. Demetrius was in the same boat as her. If the third section was relatively difficult, then the fourth section was difficult. Meanwhile, Levi had realized that silence and Astra AI didn't match. Even if he wanted to continue using gestures, it wouldn't be as accurate as asking her exactly what he needed. Although Levi wanted to save solar energy, he also wasn't stupid and stubborn enough to stick to his decision even if it was affecting him negatively. When the time comes, I will see what I can do, but now, I need to be efficient. Levi paced over the platform while holding his chin, seemingly deep in thought. But, in reality, he was using the noise of each step to release a sound wave pulse. Each pulse drew the walls and all of their engraved inscriptions. Levi's auditory vision replicated the walls in his mind, and he started analyzing each wall on its own. When he did this, he finally noticed an actual clue related to the totem's origin called the Healer's Cry. The surprising part, it was an English poem. Instead of wasting more of his energy, Levi relied on Astra to read him the poem by gesturing with his head at it. Vast lands he crossed, in silence deep, all to cure, his vow to keep. Eyes of stone, and heart of gold, led him to where the tale was told. Is this? As Astra was reciting the poem, Levi was surprised to recognize it immediately. He had read it years ago when he studied cold-related totems. It was about a traveling daywalker who visited a village with its people all cursed by a plague that made their blood turn cold on full moon nights. Levi didn't know if it was a fictional fable or based on a true story, but the totem used to heal those villagers was the Emberheart totem, and that's where its name came from. Seeing that the incantation wasn't written on it, Levi knew that Instructor Seraphis would never be this direct. The original incantation must be correct and just missing a word or two that were customized by him. Levi analyzed the poem deeply, and it didn't take him long before he found out that the first letter of the first half could be combined to create an Aethorian word even though the poem was in English. Varel Thura, it means sacred light. This must be it. Levi immediately used the word in conjunction with the original incantation in his mind until he got the most logical one. Without further ado, Levi uttered out loud for the first time since he entered the third section. By sacred light's eternal glow, let warmth dissolve this frigid woe. The moment Levi's voice faded, the Emberheart totem shone brightly for a moment before the wall's glow changed to green. Ting! The bell rang on the door as it slowly opened up to the fourth section under the cheers of Arthur and his friends inside the assembly and outside. TSK, he must have gotten lucky. Demetrius clicked his tongue in irritation. Finally, he had me worried for a second there. Neura chuckled, not wanting to lose a decent rival so quickly. But soon, their expressions turned solemn as they gazed at the peculiar totem in front of them. They didn't know it, but it was the same totem presented for all candidates arriving at the fourth section. Yet, what was keeping them stuck in this section was the way the clues were presented. The moment Levi stepped into the fourth stage, he found out what was holding everyone back. The clues were whispered in ancient Aethorian by deep, eerie voices, making it extremely challenging to catch anything. Ancient Aethorian was considered the original version of the Aethorian language. The one used in modern times was a downgraded simple version. While the ancient version was also taught in school, no one bothered to learn or master it since the modern version was enough to activate most known totems. The fact that it was 10 times more complicated than the simplified version made it an easy choice for most of the populace to abandon it. Neura and Demetrius had studied some of it, but clearly, it wasn't enough as they were still struggling to understand the clues, especially when the pronunciation was very important to distinguish a word from another, and they were getting the clues by whispers. Meanwhile, The moment the ancient eerie voices whispered in Levi's ears, he heard them as clearly as a summer noon sky. Welcome to my world. Chapter 75. That's my big brother. The totem was shaped akin to a P letter mixed with a lightning bolt design, appearing as such. After listening to Ustra's description of it, Levi recognized it swiftly. Small rune of destruction. He pondered while listening to the eerie voices, is this a high-grade skill totem with destructive properties? Levi knew that skill-based totems were shaped as runes indicating their main effects. They were used to contain abilities mostly unrelated to sunlight, such as lightning strikes, fireballs, hurricanes, invisibility, flight, and such. It was like sealing the Nightcrawlers' Daywalkers' innate abilities into totems for one-time use by other people through incantations. Each Ithorian rune was connected to nature's element in one way or another. In the case of this totem, its rune was called the Small Rune of Destruction and was one of the most prominent runes in any incantation needed to activate a destruction-based totem. While knowing about it did limit Levi's hunt for answers, it still wasn't enough. This rune is in tens of thousands of totems, and those are just the known ones. Levi held his chin. Instructor Seraphis knows that it's near impossible for rookies like us to extract the real incantation of such a vague totem from mere clues. Especially in less than half an hour, which means. Levi tuned out all the noises around him, focusing purely on the whispers. They turned into clear voices speaking about different interconnected topics. The first whisper spoke about a ruined apocalyptic world where hellfire reigned everywhere. The second one was about a witch getting burned at the stake. The third one told a tale of a man betrayed by his friend and pushed into a deep pit of flames. The last one discussed a corrupt officer who was boiled alive as punishment. All of them were spoken in rhythm akin to incantations. Levi had no clue if those whispers were real or just Instructor Seraphis' imaginative creations, but he recognized that all of them were connected through fire. It was the only recurring theme. As for wondering if one of those whispers was the real incantation, Levi wasn't that foolish to consider such an easy solution as the correct one, especially not in the last section of the trial. It's a fire-based skill. Levi thought, this reduces the number of possible totems, but there must be more to the clues. Levi revised the clues and analyzed them thoroughly, not skipping even a single pronunciation of each letter. When he did this, he soon found that the Small Rune of Destruction was used in every single whisper, but in different words. Although he knew that it was a popular rune, he believed that the instructor wouldn't put it in those specific words unless there was something hidden there. As expected, his eyebrows rose a bit after he used the words together, discovering that it gave him a few possibilities for creating incantations. Rupture, vial, drawn, world, spit, hellfire, came, what, before, let, core, your. Levi thought, I only have one chance to create the true incantation. If I use the wrong one, the totem will be changed. Levi revisited the clues one last time, understanding that this was a trial of intelligence, not a trial of assumption. In simpler terms, all the answers must be buried in the clues. The word order is in the sequence of the whispers. After listening to them repeat one last time, Levi swiftly found out that the words were linked to the story's core, and if he lined them up in the same order, he would get a perfect incantation. Fully trusting in the logic behind the clues, Levi walked past the totem and stood in front of the door. This attracted everyone's attention, but no one thought much of it. They had already seen how much Demetrius and Neura were struggling with the puzzle, and after witnessing how long Levi took to complete the third section, none of them expected him to outpace the others this time. However, just as they were about to switch their focus back to Neura and Demetrius, their ears picked up on Levi's serene voice, uttering softly, Rupture, world, and spit your vile core, let hellfire drown what came before. Under everyone's stunned looks, the inscriptions on the totem lit up from the bottom with a red hue until they reached the top. Then, it released a gentle pulse of energy and started floating towards the giant keyhole on the door. Since it was shaped as, it looked just like any other key, twisting to the right and opening the door at last. Ting! The bell rang once, waking up everyone from their stupor, just to find Levi already facing the giant sealed wyvern totem. The candidates were left staring at Levi's back in disbelief after all the doors were unlocked, giving them a thorough view of the other side. When they noticed the update on the holographic screen above them, their eyes widened even more. / candidate, Levi Larson. Status, finished. Trial performance breakdown. First section, 2 seconds, grade, SSS. Second section, 5 seconds, grade, SSS. Third section, 3 minutes, grade, S. Fourth section, 2 minutes, grade, SSS+. Total time, 5 minutes and 9 seconds. Final score, SSS. Overall placement, undecided //. The deafening silence was soon broken by Arthur's cheerful, thunderous voice. That's my big brother. The moment his voice echoed in everyone's ears, the scene exploded with reactions from candidates, viewers, and even Nightcrawlers. What the hell? He solved it in less than 2 minutes. Without holograms. Was it this easy? How come Demetrius and Neura are struggling? If the same puzzle wasn't given to everyone, I would have assumed that he lucked out on an easy one. The region's network buzzed with instant tweets and emojis. Everyone was caught off guard by the trial's conclusion, especially when they had no clue what Levi did to solve the puzzle. Unlike the other candidates in his group, he had no holographic screens to show the viewers their thought process. He simply stood with his head lowered the entire time and his chin resting on his hand, akin to a statue. When he finally made his move, he opened the door and walked out on his first attempt. It can't be. Meanwhile, Demetrius didn't take the news with an open mind as he kept staring in the direction of Levi's hall in shock. He heard the bell ring, he heard the announcement of his results, and yet, he still failed to accept it. As for Neura, she was also taken aback, but for just a few moments. It's on. Her expression turned solemn as she refocused on the puzzle, knowing that if she didn't solve it in the next couple of minutes, her lead would be stolen. However, the hall's roofs were open and no one really was banned from talking, not even the Nightcrawlers. This had affected her ability to listen to the whispers even more. It was like a fading breeze passing by her ears, and she needed to catch it at the perfect moment or it would be gone, waiting until the next cycle repeated. How the hell did he solve it so fast? Does he have superhuman ears or something? She frowned. Uncaring about their struggles, Instructor Seraphis addressed Levi with a faint smile. You still have 20 minutes more or less. Are you going to solve the bonus puzzle and win the wyvern or skip it? Why not? I have some time to kill. Levi smiled back. When Demetrius heard this, his expression couldn't help but turn ugly, even when he tried his best to keep his composure intact. Bastard! He is at it again. Stealing my spotlight. He gritted his teeth hatefully, feeling a burning sensation in his chest. Ever since he was young, he was thrown into the spotlight by his big brother and parents after they found out that his light affinity was on the better end. When Mantis announced it to the Sunstrike Agency, they took him in and trained him with the Daywalkers at the age of 10. He became everyone's little brother and was showered with attention, gifts, and praise. Since his talents were shown to excel in other departments too, everyone kept telling him that he had a good chance of becoming a governor, a position given to only solar-bound Daywalkers with the best achievements in the region. After being raised in this environment, Demetrius always believed himself to be the greatest talent in their region and was waiting, preparing, for this very significant day. All for the sake of putting out the greatest debut performance in the history of the Contract Ritual Assembly. But, as he listened to the distant chatter of the candidates, hearing Levi's name popping more often than his own, this dream, this fantasy of his, was crumbling to pieces. No, 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 I refuse to fade into the background. I refuse to have my destiny rewritten by a blind cripple. I refuse. Demetrius' eyes turned bloodshot as he refocused on the puzzle in hand, but his thoughts were too consumed with Levi's to concentrate properly. But Demetrius didn't seem to care less. The moment his ears finally captured a resemblance of an incantation, his eyes shone in excitement. He believed that if Levi could solve it this quickly, it only means that the puzzle was hearing the incantation. Alas! Ash to ash, dust to air. Now my soul is everywhere. Silence. What came next was utter silence. Chapter 76. The Wyvern's Puzzle. A moment later, the totem was pulled into the platform and replaced with another, taking the shape of a different rune. Even the whispers changed, leaving Demetrius to stare at the now-shut door with quivering, half-opened lips. It was like he wanted to object, to take back what he had done, but the words refused to leave his throat. He struck out, and the fact that he did it under national TV made his unsettled heart sink to the bottom of his stomach. While he wasn't used to this vile, shameful experience, Demetrius still managed to recollect his emotions with a deep breath. Forget about him. Forget about the spotlight. Forget about everything. He narrowed his eyes coldly. I will deal with him later. For now, I must pass this section and contest the Wyvern. No one deserves that night mount more than me. No one. While Demetrius was in his own world, Levi was seen walking around the giant Wyvern wooden totem, using the same technique to scan its surface. It was filled with runic inscriptions and symbols, making it resemble a work of art. Unlike most totems, the sealing type was known to have unique, customized incantations for each one. While assault, protection, recovery, and such totems usually had a fixed, known incantation, the sealing totem was used mostly to seal Nightcrawlers. Some used those Nightcrawlers as mounts, in farms, as security guards, or even pets. Thus, a uniquely personal and hidden incantation was used for each totem to ensure that no one would steal them. That's because sealing totems were destroyed after each activation, forcing the owner to seal the Nightcrawler in another. If the incantation was known to another person, they could easily steal the Nightcrawler by sealing it using their own totem. In simpler terms, incantations were used as passwords, and one must protect their password at all times to keep their assets in place. In Levi's case, he needed to find the personalized incantation, which had no relation to history, origin, or anything. The only clues he had were the millions of inscriptions on its body. Instructor Seraphis knows that it's impossible to find the real incantation from scouring the millions of inscriptions in less than 20 minutes. Levi kept walking around the giant totem while deep in his thoughts. 20 minutes was in my case. In reality, Neura and Demetrius won't be able to find the answer in less than 10 minutes. This leaves us with just 10 minutes or less, which isn't nearly enough for even the most intelligent being in the world. If it were any other totem, Levi wouldn't have made such a bold claim. But when it came to sealing totems, he understood that the incantation could range from something utterly stupid to a brilliant piece of poetry. All due to the incantation being used purely as a password and having no relation to the effect within the totem. The divine chains holding the Nightcrawlers were the true seal and were under the Solar Aegis Sanctuary's jurisdiction, not the totem. The totem was nothing more than a container with the ability to shrink and enlarge. If he truly wants us to obtain his gift, then he must have placed the incantation in an easy-to-find spot, a spot that anyone too smart for their own good won't bother considering. Levi understood that Instructor Seraphis relished doing the opposite of what was expected. He believed that after giving the candidates such a difficult puzzle in the fourth section, they would be too overstimulated to consider basic solutions. After all, the Wyvern totem was the last piece of the puzzle, and after getting a gradual increase in difficulty, it would drive anyone to assume that it would be the most difficult puzzle in the trial. But Levi kept his head level and looked around for anything he might have missed. Maybe the clues are hidden in the past solved incantations. Levi shook his head. No, it won't work when we have 3 different puzzles in the first 3 sections. Once the activation incantation was inscribed on a totem, it couldn't be changed unless a totem carver was involved. Levi knew those kinds of people would never waste their time on such events, even if the government ordered them to join. They were considered part of the Solar Aegis Sanctuary, and only its authority could move them. Will he solve it? Instructor Seraphis' pupils thinned. While the fourth section design worked in his favor due to his sensitive ears, the last puzzle requires sight primarily. When Instructor Seraphis was designing the trials, he had no clue that a blind kid would join and make it this far. If he knew, he would have done some things differently. But what's done is done. He could only wish good luck to Levi. If it's not the previous incantations, then it might be related to the structure of the trial. Levi used a sound wave to redraw the 11 halls in his mind. He believed that the peculiar structure of the straight 11 halls might be important since there wasn't really any reason for it to be like this. Instructor Seraphis could have sat everyone down in private rooms and given them one puzzle after another until the trial concluded. He didn't strike Levi as the type to care about the artistic design of his trials, more about its content. When Levi's thought process went down this rabbit hole, he soon found himself standing near the open door of his cleared hall. As he touched it with his palm, his finger slipped inside the central keyhole and touched the totem affixed inside it. He tilted his head in intrigue as he pulled the totem out of the keyhole. Why is there a keyhole on this door while the others can be unlocked automatically? He thought. If we assume that everything has a reason, then what's the reason for it to be here? Dramatic exit? Doubtful. Levi played with the shimmering totem in his hand for a few moments and then walked to the giant wyvern totem. Then, he started putting the small hole of the rune on the inscriptions, like he was a TSA agent scanning airport travelers. He wanted to check if the totem might highlight the real incantation. After he did this for a few minutes, he stopped and requested Astra AI to scan the totem and tell him if there were any changes. Astra AI answered with a negative. This isn't it. Levi placed the totem to the side, knowing that his assumption was wrong. If Astra AI failed to detect changes, then he could have felt the incantation's faint heat if it lit up. Levi wasn't too bothered, as he had a feeling that it was a long shot. He turned around and walked back to the door, wanting to check his next theory. If the hole is the main clue, then maybe, looking through it will give me a pinpoint accurate location of the incantation. But Levi was more inclined to believe that the truth might be related to this theory. The singular central keyhole, the long hall leading to the wyvern, and its placement were perfectly aligned with the height of the keyhole. All the clues led to one answer. However, Levi wasn't convinced of it since each hall would show something different. The central halls were linked to the wyvern, while the rest of the halls were lined up against the wall behind it. Maybe there is more than a single incantation to activate the totem? It's possible, but Instructor Seraphis wouldn't go through this much hassle. Plus, the keyhole peeks at the wall behind it, and there is no incantation or mirror. There has to be something I amiss. Creak. As Levi was thinking carefully about ideas, his thoughts were interrupted by a soft creak of the door he was holding. Then, it finally dawned on him. How could I miss such an obvious solution? Levi chuckled in derision as he moved the door to face the wyvern. When he combined his echolocation and Astra's intel, he found that the keyhole was pointing exactly at the central chest area of the wyvern. It wasn't like he moved the door to face it precisely. The door stopped immediately after the keyhole faced the central chest. This made Levi understand that all the doors, were rigged to face the central chest area if pushed to their specific limit. Except for one. Levi's serene smile turned eerie as he walked towards the central hall, where Demetrius was fighting for his life to solve the fourth puzzle. After arriving, he pulled his black staff and placed it on the ground, affixing it to Demetrius' door. When Demetrius' ears picked up on Levi's movement on the other side, he opened his eyes and glanced at the central keyhole. What he saw made him feel the creeps in his stomach. It was Levi's creepy smile. Then, he heard his voice pierce the hall. I will be using your keyhole for a moment since you won't be needing it anytime soon. When Demetrius blinked in a daze, Levi was gone, and the keyhole was sealed shut. Chapter 77. The Wyvern's Puzzle. 2. The viewers and the Nightcrawlers were left speechless at the sight of Levi using his staff as a way to measure Demetrius' keyhole height from the ground. While they had no clue why he needed it, they knew he was being a disrespectful asshole by doing it, since he could have easily relied on Astra AI for an accurate answer. Ha ha, Demetrius is pissed. Sergio laughed. I would be too. He is being taunted in his face. Shia grinned. Good one, Levi. I didn't know he had it in him to be an asshole. I doubt he is doing it just to be one. Jamal smiled. Levi is trying to get in his head to increase his chances of winning the bet. While Shia's gang was relishing in Demetrius' protruding forehead veins, Mantis and his people reacted differently. The F** is cheating. He is disturbing my little brother while taking the trial. Mantis banged the table furiously. How is this shit fair? Well. Meisha coughed. The rules aren't enforcing it. The F*** you mean? Mantis glared at him. How is it fair to aggravate the candidates during a trial of intelligence? Doesn't it defeat the purpose? That's Seraphis for you. He likes being hands-on in his decisions. One of the daywalkers sighed, recalling some painful memories of his time under Seraphis' tutelage. He understood that if Seraphis had added more rules to the trial, it would rob him of the freedom to make amends. Instead, he removed only the serious issues with the rules. The rest he judged on his own. For example, if a candidate was screaming in the trial for no reason or doing it willingly to ruin the chances of his competitors, he would be punished. It was all based on the shown intention. In Levi's case, he left the moment he got what he needed, and Instructor Seraphis knew of his condition, making him understand his reason for using a staff instead of Astra. He must be trying to save up on battery to last him until the end of the day. He also knew that each scan devoured an incredible amount of energy. Since Levi had plenty of time and a ruler in hand, he might as well use it instead of wasting precious energy, especially when another trial awaited them on the same day. If only he weren't visually impaired, the Nightcrawlers would have flooded on him. Instructor Seraphis sighed as he watched Levi place the ruler in front of the wyvern's chest area, using it as a measuring stick. The wyvern was bigger than 2 meters, but it was sealed in an aggressive crouching position, making its chest area match the height of Demetrius' door. Levi knew that it was purposefully sealed like this for the sake of the puzzle. This should be it. When Levi lined up the measured height of the staff with the chest area of the wyvern, he reached out with his finger and touched the spotlighted inscribed sentence, which matched the exact measurement. Then, he traced his finger on the incantation quite rapidly while murmuring under his breath. A moment later, Levi walked away from the sealed wyvern and uttered softly, "Stormborn slumber, break and rise. Error wyvern, claim your skies." A heavenly divine light fell from the skies and illuminated the giant totem under the stunned eyes of the viewers and the candidates, who were gathering in front of Levi's wide-open hall to see what was going on. Before they could react, the wooden totem shattered into tiny fragments, and the wyvern was fully exposed in all of its glory. Kriea! It roared with its head raised to the heavens, exposing a full set of horrifying, sharp teeth. It spread out its leathery, thin-armed wings, which were carved with thousands of visible blood veins, and stood on its clawed feet, towering over Levi. With its white leathery skin and spikes traveling from its long, rugged tail to its head, it appeared as fearsome as a fossil unearthed from the dawn of time, still screaming, still deadly. When it saw Levi in front of it, its piercing golden slits narrowed on him, seemingly staring at a delicious meal. Its shadow life seed sent an electrifying pulse across its system to devour Levi and the light trapped within him. The wyvern didn't hesitate to respond, lunging at Levi with its mouth wide open and a gaze filled with nothing but gluttonous thoughts. Kree! Yet, Levi didn't even flinch, maintaining the same unprovocative smile. He wasn't faking bravery to look cool, as he knew that the wyvern would never touch him. As expected, a golden chain manifested on the wyvern's neck and forced it to lie on the ground the moment its mouth was a mere meter away from Levi. Kree! Although it was put in a crippling pain, leaving it seizing on the ground, it was still growling ferociously in the direction of Levi. What do you think? Instructor Seraphis asked with a faint, playful smirk as he held onto the golden chain of the beast. It's a feisty one. Levi chuckled. Can you handle her? You know that once it registers under your name, she will be your responsibility. Instructor Seraphis warned coldly. If she were to harm a civilian or such, you will be punished according to the laws. Yes. Well then, she is your problem now. Instructor Seraphis threw a small wooden sphere in Levi's direction, and Levi caught it without bothering to lift his head. You know how to use it. Who doesn't? Levi smiled and threw the wooden sphere in the direction of the wyvern while murmuring the same incantation. The moment the wooden sphere touched the wyvern, it shone brightly for a split second, and then it melted on its skin. Just like she received Pinocchio's curse, the wyvern started turning into wood against her roars and futile resistance. In a few seconds at most, the wyvern turned into a wooden statue in the same position she was sealed. But this wasn't all. The wooden totem started to shrink bit by bit until it turned into a 10-centimeter wyvern figurine. Levi walked to the wooden totem and collected it with a satisfied smile. Then, he lifted his head and asked casually, "I still have 15 minutes to kill. What do you want me to do?" Instructor Seraphis' eyelids twitched, not anticipating this situation. He added the gift for candidates to kill time if they finished the trial early, but neither the fourth section nor the wyvern took Levi more than 5 minutes. Now, he still had 15 minutes, and he couldn't send him back to the candidates since he could give clues on the puzzles. "Sit on the wyvern's platform and wait until the others are done. In silence," Instructor Seraphis ordered. "Okay." Under everyone's speechless looks, Levi sat with one leg above the other on the wyvern's platform and started fiddling with his new toy in silence. Meanwhile, Demetrius, Neura, and the rest of the candidates heard everything and felt a burning sensation on their cheeks. The thought of Levi finishing the trial and the bonus puzzle in less than 15 minutes didn't sit right with all of them, especially Neura and Demetrius. The embarrassment of struggling this hard when one of them had flown through the trial was eating them away. They knew that the viewers had no clue about the difficulty of the last puzzle, but after seeing how Levi finished it off, they were bound to think that he was either much smarter than them or they were too stupid to find the solution as fast. Unfortunately, both scenarios painted them in a bad light. While Neura was trained as an assassin to keep such emotions contained to avoid tainting her focus, the same couldn't be said about Demetrius. It showed at the end after Neura solved the puzzle with 5 minutes remaining, while Demetrius had struck out 3 times. "Beeb, time has run out. Get out and check your results," Instructor Seraphis announced. Chapter 78. Doing it for his own pleasure. While Neura had already joined Levi on the other side, sitting next to him and conversing about the wyvern's puzzle he solved, Demetrius' door was still shut. He was seen standing in front of it with a deadpan expression while his eyes were peeking through the keyhole, gazing at Levi and Neura talking and laughing with each other. A mere door separating them, yet Demetrius felt like he was left behind on the loser's bench, a feeling he never experienced once in his life. How disappointing. Is this his limit? I thought he was better than this. He let his emotions get the best of him. Suddenly, the Nightcrawlers' negative comments rained down on Demetrius, jolting him awake from his daze. As he lifted his head and saw their judgmental and disappointed looks, he felt like his heart was stabbed by 100 knives. "No, no," Demetrius murmured, looking like he was trying to summon the words to defend himself. Before he could collect his thoughts, Instructor Seraphis' stern voice resounded in his mind. "Demetrius, get your ass to the back of the line. Now!" "Yes, sir." When he looked around him, he found that he was the last candidate left in the halls, holding back the start of the new group. He swiftly exited the trial and glanced back at the holographic screen to see his results. When he saw the giant F grade in the 4th section, his blood went cold. Although an F grade wasn't rare in this trial, as many candidates failed to clear more than 2 sections, this was the first time Demetrius had scored anything this low. To make matters worse, Levi's unattainable score was placed right next to it, taunting and mocking him to no end. It was like Levi didn't even need to say anything. His results spoke for him. That's exactly what he did. Demetrius watched Levi get surrounded by Arthur and his friends, clearly discussing his insane results and his new night mount. Even when he walked right past him, Levi neither cursed nor taunted him. He merely ignored him. Yet, this was 10 times more humiliating to Demetrius, as the notion of being ignored made him feel like Levi wasn't considering him at the same level. Demetrius gritted his teeth until sparks were about to fly, but he said nothing to Levi this time. He just walked away from him and sat on the resting bench with his head lowered and his dark green hair hiding his cruel visage. King disabled bastard. I'm getting treated like this by the muggle of the world. My future legacy will never survive if this is how it starts. While Levi hadn't spoken or glanced in Demetrius' direction, he could listen to his heartbeats. They didn't sound like normal heartbeats in the slightest, but more like a trapped beast chewing at the cage of their chest. This made Levi recognize that if he and Demetrius were put in prison, he wouldn't hesitate to shiv him 100 times over. Yet, Levi was neither scared nor had any intention of pulling back. Demetrius was the one making this personal, and Levi was going to make sure to absolutely crush him in any trial. Forget the wager, he was doing this for his own pleasure. As much as Levi was chill, polite, and kind, he was still raised by an army of cruel and merciless Nightcrawlers. He had no intention of taking crap from anyone. Ever. Sometime later, the trial of intelligence concluded after all the groups had a taste of each section's puzzle. Melissa and Ryan scored decently, reaching the 4th section as well. Many other candidates did the same. However, none of them managed to solve the 4th puzzle. Since it changed from one group to another, even if Levi wanted to help them cheat, it wasn't possible. When these candidates made it to the 4th stage and realized that Levi had solved it in less than 5 minutes, it left them utterly stumped. They just couldn't understand how he managed to hear the whispers, decipher them, and solve the puzzle in such a short period. The leaderboard will be updated now, Instructor Seraphis announced. Hearing this, everyone lifted their heads and gazed at the shifting numbers on the holographic leaderboard. A moment later, the ranks stabilized, and a new leaderboard was born. //1. Levi Larson, 902 points. 2. Nura Blackthorn, 750 points. 3. Demetrius Bain, 550 points. 4. Huda Omari, Jojo, 440 points. 5. Melissa Harper, 420 points. 6. Arthur Larson, 402 points. 7. Omar Mansour, 370 points. 8. Celine Austris, 350 points. 9. Kira Joan, 300 points. 10. Ryan Morningstar, 287 points //. When everyone saw Levi's name claiming the throne, no one was surprised. But the massive gap in points between him and the 2nd/3rd place did raise some eyebrows. A whole 350 points between him and Demetrius, Ryan smirked. If he wants to catch up, he needs a miracle. There are still the trials of spirituality and combat left. You must not drop your guard, Melissa warned sweetly. Just as Arthur was about to laugh at her claim and brag about his brother's insane spiritual presence, Levi pinched him, silencing him instantly. Then, he told her he would keep it in mind and refocused on Instructor Seraphis' speech. Although you've all made it through without scoring 0, don't let your guard down just yet. I've prepared something special for the next trial. Most candidates felt their hearts skip a beat after realizing that the sword of elimination was still hanging above their heads. They knew that scoring 0 in the upcoming 2 trials shouldn't be possible since one tested spirituality and the other combat. But it looked like Instructor Seraphis had other plans. You have a 2-hour break before the start of the trial of spirituality, Instructor Seraphis called. You are excused. Levi, follow me. Yes, sir. Before Levi could take a step, the ground underneath his feet broke off into a floating platform and took him away, heading in the same direction as the instructor. Watching this sight, Nura approached the gloomy Demetrius and chuckled. I never knew you were so kind to donate this many solar Aegis coins to us. You! Then, she took off toward the apartment complex, uncaring that her burn left Demetrius fuming even more. But Demetrius knew that she wasn't a nobody that he could afford to insult or get on her bad side. Although he was sponsored heavily by the Sunstrike Agency, his background wasn't as authoritative. He was part of the newly arising Bane lineage family, which was considered to have only 2 generations of daywalkers. Meanwhile, Nura was the precious daughter of the Blackthorn family, an assassination-oriented family that was older than the Great Fall of civilization. Thus, just like every bully in the universe, Demetrius channeled his hatred, humiliation, and everything shitty he went through in the past 2 days into one person. His frigid eyes were locked onto Levi's retreating silhouette. I have one chance and one chance only to redeem myself. Chapter 79. Domesticated Nightcrawlers Division. Sometime later, Levi exited the boundless expanse through Willow Grove's dimensional mirror under Instructor Seraphis' guidance. Follow my voice. Ah, thank you. Instructor Seraphis led the way toward the elevator, using his voice to guide Levi, fully aware that helping him this way would preserve the battery of his device. What he didn't know was that his assistance also saved Levi from wasting his solar energy, as Levi kept his echolocation ability turned off, relying purely on Seraphis' vocal cues. He had lived over a decade like this, so it wasn't much of a challenge. After a short while, they arrived at the elevator, and Instructor Seraphis pressed an illuminating rune marked with an arrow pointing upward. Upon activation, the runic diagram on the elevator's floor shimmered softly, and then the platform began rising, passing floor after floor of the Willow Grove. At any other time, Levi might have used his echolocation to paint his surroundings and see Willow Grove's inner workings in great detail. But now, he had to ration his energy until the end of the assembly. He was missing quite a view. Each floor of Willow Grove served a unique function for the Solar Aegis Sanctuary. The ground floor was open to civilians for paying respects to the grove and the solar deities. From the first floor upward, various divisions were housed: governmental liaisons, human resources, totem engravers, totem auction houses, natural treasure traders, donation centers, crystallized seeds only, solar Aegis coin exchanges, and much more. Some of these divisions were open to daywalkers, while others remained private under sanctuary jurisdiction. It could be said that Willow Grove was the beating heart of the daywalkers' regional operations. Meanwhile, the highest floor was reserved for the guardians of the Solar Aegis Sanctuary, those who supervised and maintained authority over the region's sanctuary branch. Although Levi hadn't asked where they were headed, he knew that Instructor Seraphis was taking him to the domesticated Nightcrawlers division, the division responsible for all matters related to Nightcrawlers repurposed as pets, mounts, livestock, or otherwise. When the elevator finally stopped, Levi's spiritual perception picked up a bustling scene filled with daywalkers and chained Nightcrawlers scattered across the floor. Although he couldn't see them physically, their spiritual auras painted his world in vibrant strokes, making it feel as though he had stepped into a crowded bazaar. Luminous snacks of the highest quality, sold in bulk for cheap. Tier 2 Nightingale up for auction in 15 minutes. Hey, champ, you look like you need a mighty ox testicle. Come on, don't give me that look. Just slow boil it for 3 hours and eat it. You'll be running like a nuclear engine. His ears caught the cries of merchants, the rhythmic thunk-thunk of woodcarvers' tools, and the gentle sway of rope bridges above. Stalls of all sizes had been built into the living bark of the grove, glowing with lanterns made of bioluminescent fungi. A soft greenish haze blanketed the air. When Levi inhaled deeply, a whirlwind of scents bombarded his nose, some pleasant, some putrid. Yet the atmosphere somehow remained fresh, almost humidified, with one dominant aroma prevailing: the rich, earthen scent of Willow Grove itself. Welcome to the Nightcrawlers Bazaar. First time here? Instructor Seraphis asked as he led Levi through the dense marketplace. Yes. I was homeschooled, so I never went on school trips inside the sanctuary, Levi replied. I see. Well, you're not missing much. Instructor Seraphis went on to explain that the Nightcrawlers Bazaar was the region's largest hub for Nightcrawler-related trade and information. Here, people bought and sold Tier 1 and 2 Nightcrawlers, their food, body parts, accessories. You name it. Even instructional books on raising Nightcrawlers were available. But we're not here for any of that. I know. You're going to help me register the wyvern under my name and assist with changing its incantation. Levi nodded. Exactly. Ignoring the merchant's calls, Instructor Seraphis tugged Levi by the shirt through the crowd, making a beeline for the registration office near the entrance. A long queue of daywalkers was already lined up outside its gate. The registration office was the only place authorized to officially register Nightcrawlers in the entire region, making it one of the most demanded services in the sanctuary. Though the government handled data and enforcement, the chains and registration fell solely under sanctuary control. After all, every Nightcrawler needed to be bound by divine chains to gain immunity from sunlight and holy energies. Unfortunately, once a Nightcrawler was chained like this, evolution became nearly impossible. The immunity blocked their ability to absorb solar energy, the primary catalyst for higher growth. As for luminous snacks, growth totems, and such, they were affectionately named snacks for a reason. They served more for bonding and mild enhancement rather than real growth. I don't have time for this. Instructor Seraphis had no patience for lines, especially not with another trial beginning in 2 hours. He bypassed the queue entirely, flashing his instructor credentials. The guards didn't stop him. Foreign daywalkers grumbled in protest, but the natives remained silent, recognizing him on sight. Seraphis had worked at the Grand Training Center for over 15 years. Anyone who'd grown up in the region knew his name. Once inside, they waited a few minutes while the current client was processed. The official at the desk was a wrinkled old man with a bald head mottled with red flecks. He wore the traditional sanctuary uniform, a white suit with black stripes on the shoulders and a green robe. The robe's color denoted his rank, the runes on his back, his position. "Come back in a week to pick up your Nightcrawler." "Next," he croaked, sounding like he'd smoked 10 packs a day. "Good morning, Yesef. How's the family? That bratty granddaughter of yours still giving you a headache?" Instructor Seraphis greeted with a chuckle, taking a seat at the wooden desk. The office felt like a squirrel's den. Oval, cozy, furnished with a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall-length library stacked with wooden totem figurines. Bioluminescent fungi lit the space in a warm, white glow. "Seraphis, long time no see. The family's fine. And yeah, she's still a handful. What about you? Still waging war against relationships?" Seraphis laughed and shook his head. "I gave up. Relationships are nothing but trouble." Levi, listening quietly, noticed a small skip in Seraphis' heartbeat, just a flicker, but said nothing. "Well, you're nearly 50. Only you can crack your own stubborn mind." Yesef chuckled and turned toward Levi. "And who's this young lad? One of your trainees?" "Not yet." Seraphis smiled faintly. "He earned one of my personal gifts during the assembly. I brought him here to register it." "Aho? Must be something special if you're personally involved." "Are you calling me stingy?" "Haha, a bit. I'm not stingy. I just don't entertain mediocrity with my generosity." Seraphis scoffed. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." Yesef grinned and looked at Levi. "Well then, what are we registering?" "A Tier 2 Error Wyvern, sir," Levi answered, handing over the figurine and retreating respectfully. "Polite kids like you don't need to stand." Yesef smiled, offering him a seat. "Thank you." Levi understood from his tone and took the offered seat across from Seraphis. "Excuse the mess," Yesef said, brushing aside papers, coffee cups, and scattered totems before placing the figurine on the desk. He fixed a magnifying loupe to his right eye and began scanning the item. After a few moments, he muttered under his breath, "Ferocious and vicious. Are you sure this is the right gift for a pre-contracted daywalker? Is she that bad?" Seraphis frowned. "I bought her on a bargain overseas. I knew she was wild, but not unmanageable." "You're mistaken, my friend. This isn't a pure Error Wyvern. She has traits from the finite storm dragons. See here." Yesef pointed at the triclawed wing with a magnifying glass. "Typical Error Wyverns have 2 claws, not 3. "I had no idea." Seraphis raised an eyebrow. "Astra must have misclassified it. Is that a good or bad thing?" Levi asked politely. "Unfortunately, not good," Yesef sighed. "If she could evolve, it'd be promising. But since she's being registered, she'll stay stuck at Tier 2. The finite storm dragons are notoriously aggressive. I'm afraid she inherited their temperament and some of their low-grade abilities, nothing more." "I understand." Levi nodded calmly. "I suggest you start with a tamer night mount. Many rookie daywalkers end up injured, or worse, cause harm to others." Yesef warned. "Thank you for the advice, sir. I'll keep it in mind," Levi replied respectfully. Seraphis, sensing Levi's resolve, chimed in. "Still, go ahead and register her under his name. He can use her as a mount once he becomes a high-ranked daywalker." "All right," I'll need your full name and your chosen incantation written down. I'll begin immediately. Levi wrote his incantation discreetly, showing it only to Yesef. Even Seraphis wasn't allowed to see it. That way, if the night mount was ever stolen, it could be tracked via the registry. Yesef stood and placed the figurine on the uppermost shelf. Come back in 3 days. We will. Thank you for your time. Seraphis shook Yesef's hand and tossed out a dad joke about his granddaughter before leaving with Levi. As they retraced their steps through the marketplace, Levi asked curiously, why 3 days? He figured Yesef could have sped things up as a friend. He didn't know that 3 days was the expedited option. The paperwork takes less than an hour, Seraphis explained, but changing the divine chains and registering your incantation takes longer. He has to send it to the 20th floor, where they'll break the old chains and bind new ones under your authority. I didn't know the chains needed changing, too. Levi raised an eyebrow. He was aware of the basics, like people getting burned for touching others' chains, but he hadn't realized the significance of ownership. Only the registered owner can handle divine chains without consequence, Seraphis explained. That's why the system is so strict. I understand. Levi absorbed the information quietly, nodding with a thoughtful hum. Chapter 80, A Dull Race. Sometime later, Levi was dropped in his room by Instructor Seraphis, and he went straight to put his Neuralens device on its charging station. The device's battery usually lasted for 2 days if it was used minimally. But if holograms were being used multiple times a day, the duration would be halved. In the case of Levi, it lasted him half a day or less, depending on how much he abused its scanning capabilities. Unfortunately, the device needed to be charged with a port using either a connected outlet or a power bank. Its batteries couldn't be replaced since the device was sealed shut and protected with a tough silicon layer to ensure it survived the Daywalker's tough battles. Next, Levi removed his clothes and went to take a quick shower. Then, he took a short nap, and when he woke up, there was only half an hour left before the start of the next trial. Levi retrieved the device and placed it on his ear, hiding it under his messy black hair. Astra, how's the battery? About 27%, sir. A bit lower than ideal, but it will be enough until the trial ends. After Levi left his room, he went to knock on his brother's door. The room placement remained the same until the rankings were finalized at the end of the day. In other words, Arthur had to perform much better than his previous performance if he didn't want to get kicked out of the sweet side. When the Larson brothers grouped up, they went to the first floor together, finding that most candidates were already gathered there. The atmosphere was quite solemn as many candidates weren't performing as well as they had anticipated. If we considered the assembly to be a popularity contest and the judges were the Nightcrawlers, then no one was drawing as much attention as Levi, Neura, Demetris, and the rest of the top 10. While the others were still in the assembly, it didn't mean that they would get signed at the end. After waiting for a few minutes here, Instructor Seraphis called for everyone to gather outside the apartment complex. When they got out, their eyes were graced by the sight of 50 wooden dolls standing one next to the other, forming 10 lines. Each line had more than 5 dolls situated behind it. The dolls were about 3 feet tall, and their faces were just plain brown with a simple painted smile. Their eyes were empty glass holes that didn't match the happy expression, making them appear fake and creepy. Their bodies were covered in inscriptions, while their backs had 4 major runic symbols surrounded by the inscriptions. They were standing on a 10-way racing track with the finish line situated 2 kilometers away. Everyone was taken aback a bit as they didn't expect such a sight in the trial of spirituality. They anticipated the same trial from the previous years, as many instructors rarely changed the standardized method. I know all of you were anticipating a spiritual orb to test your spiritual potential, but its results were always missing the mark by a little. So, I have decided to spice things up with a new challenge. Instructor Seraphis announced sternly, a dull race. This time, Instructor Seraphis had left even the viewers and the Nightcrawlers speechless as they had never seen or heard of such a way of spiritual testing. They were used to the spiritual orb, which gave a decent reading of one's spiritual potential by showing a color corresponding to their potential. However, this method had given some false readings before, as a few daywalkers had managed to find that their spiritual potential was much higher than what was tested. It just needed some awakening. But by the time they realized it, they had already committed to a different specialization. The psych specialization was considered the best of them all and the hardest to get into since it didn't use just solar energy, but also spiritual energy. Not everyone can support mental-based abilities. Don't worry. I know that all of you have yet to weaponize your spiritual laywell. The dolls can connect to your dormant spiritual laywell and will start moving automatically. The distance traveled, their speed, their mobility, their balance, everything will consume your spiritual energy, which means the more we have, the better our results will turn out. Neura completed it for him, leaving him to nod in approval. Levi and the rest of the candidates realized that this approach was indeed much better than using the spiritual orb. That's because the desperation to win might drive some candidates to go beyond their limits and awaken their true spiritual potential. Also, there are only 3 rules in this trial. Don't interfere with the dolls physically, don't aim for the head, and don't form groups larger than 6. Instructor Seraphis added calmly. When the candidates heard this, their shoulders tensed up immediately as they started putting some distance from each other. Some even reached out to their weapons, understanding that Instructor Seraphis was allowing them to fight and hinder their competitors. A lucky break at last. I don't even have to wait until the trial of combat. Demetrius loved this development to no end. His frigid eyes were affixed on Levi, hiding a miasma of bad thoughts. It showed when his palm reached out to his sheathed sword, pulling just a bit of it, exposing a dangerous gleam. He wasn't the only one, as many candidates seemed to eye Levi, Jojo, Melissa, and the rest of the top 20 candidates. Those candidates knew that their spiritual presence was a lost cause, which meant their next best move was to show their combat capabilities by taking down the top 20 candidates. In this assembly, every chance one gets to demonstrate their talents must be taken seriously. Who knew? Maybe it would be the sole reason a Nightcrawler would take interest in them. This doesn't look promising. Melissa murmured as she hurdled up with Jojo, Ryan, and the Larson brothers. We have to protect each other's backs. Jojo said solemnly as she removed her monk robe, leaving only a skin-tight black and orange combat suit. Unlike many candidates, she had no weapons in hand besides her smooth mirror-like bald head that could be used to blind others. I wish we get jumped. Ryan rubbed his knees excitedly. I still need to pop off like you guys. I feel the same. Arthur grinned deviously as he cracked his knuckles, the noise alone causing some candidates to take a step back and reflect on their decision. What an interesting trial. It tests their spirituality amidst a chaotic environment. Maybe we will finally get some decent psych specialists. Truly, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. The Nightcrawlers clamored in the skies above as everyone was thrilled with the new trial setup. In their eyes, any chance to witness the candidates fight was appreciated. After all, none of the trials really mattered if the candidates had feet for hands when it came to battles. The dolls are positioned based on your rankings. The front row is for the top 10 candidates, and the second row is for the top 20, and it goes down until the last one. Now, utter the incantation I have sent you. The doll will be linked to your spiritual laywell, and once I start the race, it will start consuming spiritual energy from it. Instructor Seraphis said. Spiritual laywell was referring to the human's consciousness space, where their soul was believed to reside. For normal citizens, the spiritual laywell was closed shut and quite useless. But once they signed a contract and obtained their Shadow Life seed, it helped them unlock it. The moment this happened, the Daywalkers were able to utilize their spiritual energy freely, depending on their potential. The spiritual laywell wasn't the same for everyone, which was the main reason it required a special talent to become a psych specialist. After Levi received the incantation, he murmured it like the others. In no time, he felt a sudden connection with one of the dolls. When he focused his mind on it, a spiritual string emerged from his forehead and traveled across the darkness. Then, it stopped, and the spiritual aura of a doll emerged in his line of sight. Yet, the shocking part, he felt like he could control it with his thoughts. Levi didn't dare try to test out if he could truly move the doll or not. He understood that it might draw unnecessary attention to him since he was still believed to be a normal citizen. He had already asked Ashkral about his spiritual prowess, and he told him that his spiritual laywell might have gotten unlocked the instant his eyes were ripped out. It was the only viable explanation for Levi's ludicrous spiritual vision, as it was a known fact that spiritual laywell needed training through constant utilization to grow. It also explained how Levi managed to see the two Nightcrawlers from that cursed night when his eyes were gone. Of course, Ashkral's theory of his stolen eyes being unique also played a heavy role. In simpler terms, Levi had been growing his spiritual laywell for the past decade through his spiritual vision, which set his level on a different stratosphere than everyone here. Just as Levi was about to ponder how he should play this, Instructor Seraphis announced, "Choose your positions within the 2-kilometer arena radius. If you get out of the range, the spiritual link will be severed and your doll will fall flat-faced on the ground. Any doll that doesn't reach the finish line in less than 30 minutes will cause its owner to be eliminated." Most candidates' expressions turned ugly at such a damning piece of news. Is this really the right call? Lord Idris frowned at his old friend's merciless elimination process.